It's a fifth such occasion for the grand old home of cricket. But for many, it's still a first. A first World Cup final in a whole generation for the home team. A first for him. Him. Oh wait, for all of them. And as many firsts go, there will be nerves, gasps, even stunned silences. Because nobody wants to come second. History isn't too kind to runners-up. But for the firsts, well, if you make it, you'll always be the first for the ages.
And so it comes down to this, cricket's greatest fixture on cricket's holiest turf, England against New Zealand to become the first-time champions of the Cricket World Cup. In its 12th edition, we are finally down to the World Cup final, Owen Morgan's England against Kane Williamson's New Zealand. Looking ahead to that game on ESPN Cricinfo Matchday UK 2019. Everyone wants to be a part of this. What a turnaround for England after 4 years back, ironically against New Zealand. They discovered that their game needs to be changed. They modelled it around New Zealand, and 4 years on, after becoming the #1 ranked team, after playing a final at home, after doing it the hard way, they must now beat New Zealand if they are to be crowned world champions for the first time. For Kane Williamson's New Zealand, a number of them that remember what it was like at the MCG, it couldn't have gotten any bigger, but it has. It's now a final at Lord's. Dan Vettori knows the exact feeling of being part of a World Cup final dressing room. Ajit Agarkar is here as well. It's a day for bowlers. Bowlers are winning teams semi-finals. So Graeme, Swann and Murali Karthik will join us in just a bit. But Dan Vettori doesn't get any bigger than this, I guess, for New Zealand.
Oh, they must be so excited. Unfortunately, a little slight delay, so that'll put them down a little bit. But I think the atmosphere of the semi-final will find its way into the final as well for both teams. I think there's a New Zealand team that played so well against India, and they're going to take a lot of confidence into this game.
Yeah, like Dan's already pointed out, now we have a slight delay. Everyone wants to be a part of this World Cup final, including the rain. That's been such an integral member of this year's World Cup, and they decided to have a small but not significant say, a 15-minute delay while the ground staff at Lord's get things in perfect shape for the start of the game. So a 15-minute delay in the toss and a 15-minute delay in the start of the game too. But I guess it's in some ways a fitting final. Two teams that have fought hard, that had to do it the hard way under pressure, and have pulled through, and here they are in the final now.
Yeah, a bit more nervous energy for 15 more minutes, I guess. Yeah. I'm sure both teams are excited. This is what, as a player, you want to be part of that one final. You work so hard, 4 years. You don't quite know whether you'll ever get a chance in your career. So they must be excited. And they've done it, they're both deserving. New Zealand having lost their last 3 games, but winning a big one against India, and England winning their last 3 ones. So yeah, both deserving finalists.
And they know it. New Zealand fans know it. England fans know it. They all know how much they've been this close to holding a World Cup trophy, only to see it slip away on more than one occasion. For New Zealand, the closest they came was at the MCG, where they lost to Michael Clarke's Australia, and then England, of course, 3 finals that were in the early days of the World Cup. These players have no memories of those, but the last final was in 1992, a generation back, and that 2015 final, there'll be some learnings from that. A lot of those players, including yourself, playing your first World Cup final, it's a different conversation now. 5 or 6 of them have had the taste of World Cup finals defeat.
And I think the learnings come in the build-up. I don't think it'll be so much about the game. It'll be understanding what it means to be in a World Cup final, all the extra media, all the extra attention, all the extra analysis that goes on to each individual player, particularly the guys who've succeeded in the tournament. So I think that team will be able to deal with it a lot better because of that experience, but also because it's in England. You don't have to travel. You can just no flights, pop down the road and get on with things. And I think sometimes when you take that flight, and the New Zealand team previously had to swap countries for the first time, pop over to Australia, different conditions. I think this New Zealand team, with that experience and also being in England, will be prepared and ready for everything.
Yeah, they are quietly confident. They continue to live the understated underdog sort of story. We'll hear from Kane Williamson in a bit. just before that. England need no recollection of the finals that they've been part of, losing to three of the most inspirational leaders the game has ever seen: Clive Lloyd's West Indies in '79, Alan Border's Australia in '87, and Imran Khan's Pakistan in 1992. They'd be hoping maybe to get a bat first, given how chasers have just gone wrong for them. First at Lord's in '79 and Eden Gardens in '87, when the chase was almost there when Mike Gatting decided to play a shot that will haunt him for the rest of his life. And then it was Wasim Akram and Imran Khan that carried the day for Pakistan on a memorable day in '92. But history needs to be put aside now, because new history will be written today. Either England or New Zealand will be champions for the very first time, and our champions are waiting outside Lord's. Alexis Nunes is there. She's got a colourful tie that Murali Karthik is donning to her right, and she's got a not so colourful tie, because I don't know what happened to the MCC tie for Graeme. Swann, it is almost home, Swanee. Alexis, all yours.
It is in Roanoke now. I've always dreamt about watching cricket at Lord's, and now that I've finally made it, all I have to say is I never imagined this much vibes at Lord's. It's somewhat of a mix between Carnival in the Caribbean and maybe an IPL match, because best believe Indian fans are here in their full kit, as you would expect. Karthik has already been mobbed a couple of times. We've got a nice little taste of Kiwi culture to our right now. But Swanee, this is one of your homes. Of course, we know nothing compares to Trent Bridge for you, but amazing atmosphere, considering that there were so many questions about the tickets and if the appropriate fans would be able to come out and support their teams.
Well, absolutely, and I don't think it's a bad thing if fans from around the world hedge their bets, bought the tickets, and they're here for the final. It's great. There will be a majority English crowd, of course. Yes, and by the way, no, the MCC tie is not on. I've worn it once. Australia beat England that day. There's no way I'm jinxing this. No way in the world, Ronnie. Thank you very much. But I think it's absolutely brilliant. You know, this weather kind of just makes this, you think it's not going to be a massive scoring day. It's not going to be a 350 and things like that. There's definite overhead conditions. They put the toss back by 15 minutes. It brings both sets of opening bowlers into play. Whoever wins the toss, I should think, will bowl today because of the overhead conditions. At Lord's, that is a massive thing that you do. If there is a chance to bowl, you do under the cloud. You know, if Bolt and Henry get the new ball, you think that's going to be a tasty first 10 overs. England will have to bat well. If Jofra Archer gets that new ball, wow, look out. So honestly, I barely slept last night. I was never this excited when I played cricket. England are actually in a World Cup final, when a month ago I was coming up with all the excuses in the world who I'm going to talk to about Bangladesh winning the World Cup instead of England. But now they've got the chance to do it. New Zealand as well, my second favourite country, my second home. Dan Vettori, my favourite human being on the planet. There couldn't be a more perfect day. Second favourite, I'm so sorry.
Perfect, it's fine. Let's go to Karthik on this one now. Karthik, you heard what Swanee said as well about the atmosphere, and we were here at training just yesterday, and I had put out a picture on Twitter of the pitch that was getting ready for today's matchup, and of course the Twitter army came at me and they said, where's the pitch? It looks like a golf course, golfing greens that is, but we know that just because we do see a lot of greens doesn't mean that it's going to play the way that we really expect, as we have seen in a couple of matches in the past. So what are you expecting now from that pitch that we just said and the conditions that we're seeing now? It was raining earlier on today, but it has stopped, and the sun should be making an appearance later on. Should.
It still looks green to me. Went and saw it. It still looks a bit green. They were still rolling it. And Swanee is absolutely right. Sometimes at Lord's, you just take everything out, and if the sun comes out or goes out, then it becomes a good batting surface. But if the overheads are like this, and if you've got conditions like that, obviously it's a tough one, because finals you say, oh, scoreboard pressure, whatever you put, the other team has to chase. But given the conditions, what would the team? The conundrum would always be, should we bowl first, should we bat first? But the conditions per se right now ask for you to bowl first. So it'll be interesting what the captains decide. But look, seriously, you're absolutely right. I've never seen Lord's like this. It actually gives me a feeling of India. This road has been cordoned off, which has never happened.
Never happened.
Never happened. And the thing is that over here we feel as if all the prim and properness is gone.
Yes.
The stiff upper lip is gone.
It's more like India and the West Indies over here, with a bit of South Africa as well. We see the South African fans with their shirts too. You can definitely get it. It's absolutely beautiful here at Lord's. And with that said, though, with a nice mix of crowd, Swanee, I have to go back to you again about the pressure, because that is a word that we've been using from before the World Cup started. I even spoke to Mark Wood a little bit yesterday, because we heard from the Kiwi side, and Kane Williamson said, look, we're honestly, as cliche as this sounds, we're treating this just like any other game. That's what works for them. Mark would, let me know that, it's okay to let it sink in, because this is a World Cup final. This is the biggest game of his career. So just talk to me about what these players are probably going through and thinking, because if you, who are not going to be on the pitch, you couldn't sleep last night. Can you only imagine them?
Yeah, I couldn't sleep last night because of the game and because I was out on town. So, it's London, it's great.
Standard.
But, when the excitement's there, Kane Williamson is one of the most laid-back, phlegmatic characters I know in the game, and he probably is able to treat it like just another game. New Zealand, on the whole, as a country, is very laid-back, and they probably can, to a bigger degree than most people, take it as just another match. The England lads should not do that. The England lads in this tournament, when they had just another game, they lost. They didn't like it. When they had 4 absolutely do-or-die knockout games, they rose to the occasion and played incredible cricket. So if I was the England coach, I would be saying to them last night, lads, this is the biggest game of your life. It's win or lose. There's no way you cannot be excited. I would be hyping this team up. When they're hyped up, they play great cricket. And, I've never played in a World Cup final. Well, only under 19 World Cup final against New Zealand. Actually, doesn't matter who won that. We won't go into it. But I mean, it is the biggest game in one-day cricket in the world. And these players, like you say, Lords has changed. Lords has got a carnival atmosphere. This is the biggest thing that many of these guys will ever experience, because few of them will not play Test cricket. This is it. This is the biggest day of their lives. Go out there and love every moment of it.
Soak it all in. We hope you guys have managed to soak in some of the atmosphere here at Lords, because like I said, it's a very, very different Lords today. And we're going to send some positive vibrations back to studio with you guys.
All right, stay put, Alexis, Karthik, Swanny. Make sure that the rain doesn't trouble us anymore. We'll go back to Lords to hear more from Graeme, Swann, Murali Karthik and Alexis Nunes. So much talk about this pitch and the sort of colours, like Alexis pointed out, it was almost deceiving us with on the eve of the World Cup final. Let's see what it's made up of on the day itself. The pitch report for viewers in the Caribbean. Ian Bishop is there for an objective analysis, and Saurav Ganguly as well at Lords, 17 years and fully clothed. And viewers on ESPN Cricinfo, stay with us as we try and understand what this odd greenness could be about. Is it almost a deceptive green, Ajit, at times?
That's what everyone keeps saying. I mean, although the Australia game wasn't a flat wicket, so there was something in it for the bowlers, plus the overhead conditions now. So they should, even if you do end up losing the toss, and you've seen no one's won at Lords chasing a total in a final. So even if you bat first or bat second, I don't think teams would be that disappointed if the conditions do stay the way they are.
It's a big thing that Swanny says, maybe look to bowl first, but Lords, all the games, one batting first, and just looking at that pitch.
Well, I think the experiences we've been with Middlesex and knowing Owen Morgan well, that he will know that wicket better than anyone, and he'll understand that that's actually quite dry underneath, and it deteriorates, not rapidly, but it will deteriorate. So I think the greenness is almost irrelevant, and I think both teams will look to bat first.
All right, well, we will in just a little while from now know what the captain decides to do after winning the toss. That toss slightly delayed, like we said, just by 15 minutes. We will be with you as it happens on ESPN Cricinfo Match Day. Right, so there is a little more green on that pitch that perhaps a few batsmen would like, but you never know. These greens can mean many things, and the teams batting first have done well at Lords. But what's the camp in the mood like? Kane Williamson and Owen Morgan were all smiles. Let's hear from both captains on the eve of the World Cup final.
I haven't allowed myself to think about lifting the trophy. Cricket and sport in particular is very fickle. If you ever get ahead of it, it always seems to bite you in the backside. So yeah, I haven't done that. And for us to win it, I think around the country, it would be awesome. Great for the game. I think quite iconic in certainly young kids' memory, particularly if they're watching it at home. And we managed to lift the trophy. It'd be awesome.
England rightly so deserved to be favourites. I think coming into this tournament from the start, they were favourites, and they've been playing really good cricket. But whatever dog we are, it's just important that we focus on the cricket that we want to play, and we've seen over the years that that anybody can beat anybody, regardless of breed of dog.
Well, they're two very likeable personalities. They're very affable when they speak in press conferences, and that doesn't always happen with New Zealand captains, does it now, Daniel? But Kane Williamson, just with the way he approaches it, it does seem like he still doesn't mind a laugh, whatever sort of dog we are. But this whole thing of flying under the radar, going into the final, where England are clearly overwhelming favourites from the home crowd and whatnot. Does that play into New Zealand's hands to some degree?
It was a good line. I enjoyed that by Kane. Look, I think Swanee summed it up really well. I think you've got to be natural or authentic to what you are, and New Zealand will enjoy just going by and getting on with the game. The expectations being low. Whoever the favourite is will be irrelevant to them because they'll believe in themselves that they can win no matter what. And it's the same for England. I like Swanee's point around how they should get up. I mean, everyone's talking about another game.
Yes.
Just go for it. You've got to do what actually comes to you naturally. And I saw Trevor Bayliss talking to them in the big group. I've hardly ever seen TB talk, so it was amazing to see that group. And maybe that is part of it, that this is a group that wants to get up for the challenge, wants to fight, wants to be the favourites. So both teams have their wish. They can have that sort of atmosphere that's right for the team.
You know, I was part of a final, didn't play in that
Yes,
in 2003. And I think India went away from what sort of worked for them and was perhaps at the start of that innings were a bit too aggressive or over aggressive to start their innings. Maybe just hyped up, probably didn't suit the team at that point. Backfired a little bit at the start of that, and we couldn't quite get the job done. So he's right. I mean, both teams could approach it in a different way, which might make for a good game.
Yeah, I remember that India won the toss that day, didn't they?
Yeah.
And decided to bowl. Was that a sort of a decision that again came from a place of not sure?
Sort of a little bit of cloud around, a little bit of rain around that morning. Yeah, we know what happened after that.
Yeah, well, we do. Well, that's a
Why
good
are you
point.
bringing that up?
I'm just, Ajit's the one who brought it up. I didn't post it. Anyway, now Indian fans can sit back, relax and not care about who wins this, although it does seem like, from what I can gauge from the pulse of social media, that there is a significant support that's coming the way of Kane Williamson's New Zealand. I'm sure Graeme Swann wouldn't mind because that makes England the underdog or the team to beat in this final. Let's hear from the players themselves. Nerves must be something else. Mitchell Santner wasn't part of that 2015 World Cup final because there was a far better left-arm spinner who was playing in the form of Daniel Vettori. But Mel Farrell caught up with a man who bowled a significant spell to turn the semi-final in New Zealand's direction. Let's see what Santner had to say.
When it comes to this final, so much had been made of England getting here and being on free-to-air and what it would mean to English cricket if they were to win. But give us a sense of what would it mean for New Zealand cricket and what has the reaction been like back there?
Yeah, I guess, we saw, last time round, 4 years ago in the World Cup, everyone got behind New Zealand. I guess it was, in New Zealand as well, but it was awesome to see the support, and we've seen it again this year. Everyone back home has been right behind us. So it'd be nice if we actually got over the line as well. But yeah, obviously, I guess there is a bit of pressure on England as well, being, favourites to win, being at home and stuff like that. But it's just awesome to be in another final. It's only the second time we've got to a final. And I think, England have never won it as well. So I guess we're going to have someone new is going to lift the trophy.
It's an interesting time we're in. It's very different from when Ajit was part of that Indian team in 2003. Now social media sends its wishes across. Prime ministers get involved, parliamentarians get involved, other teams get involved. And how much of that seeps through to the team? Did you have any of that? I remember what Brendan McCullum had done last time, something on asking the Indian fans to back them now that Australia had beaten India in the semi, all sorts of things. Did they get to the final, to the team?
I think it will seep through. I think seeing the crowd may change that. If you just see English shirts everywhere, that may change the atmosphere. But it sort of feels like the final that every neutral would like to see, that sit back and enjoy the game. And I feel like both teams have equal amount of support. I know there's been a push for New Zealand to get the extra support, but I feel like it's the makings of a great final because there's interest in the cricket. There's no partisanship to let's go this team or let's go this team. It's just sit back. A first time winner plays the major part in that. I think there's excitement about seeing either a light blue shirt or a black shirt lifting the trophy for everyone.
And to some degree, does that even play to the opposition? I mean, India would have seen a mighty Australian team unbeaten in 2003, defending champions. New Zealand saw the same in 2015, Australia at home. Today, it's not about Australia or even India who've won this in recent times. It's almost you're considering yourself as equals?
Possibly, because you've not actually gotten over the line. Both teams have been in the finals before and not managed to win. But if you look at what's happened over the last few years, I mean, you've got to still say that England, on paper, have most bases covered. Doesn't mean anything once you start the game. But they'll definitely start favourites. So that might play a part. hopefully the best New Zealand turn up.
Intimidation, is that part of today's menu, given that these are, like Dan Vettori and Ajit have pointed out, teams that haven't gotten over the line? They're both almost equals in terms of, well, number of World Cup wins for sure, but will that be different when both the teams step out? Now, bowlers are stepping up when it matters most in the semi-finals. Chris Stokes, man of the match, Matt Henry, man of the match, and Mark Wood had the pleasure of talking to Alexis Nunes ahead of this game. Let's see what the English camp is feeling like.
I just think they're a really good team. They have great team togetherness. You can tell that on the field when you play against them. They always back each other up. Their fielding's outstanding. If you underestimate them at your peril, sort of thing. In a way, it's actually quite poetic that we're playing New Zealand in the final, because if you look where we've come from, 2015. Our first series after that World Cup was New Zealand. We wanted to play a little bit like Brendan McCullum's New Zealand side. We're now playing in that manner. New Zealand are playing in that manner. And every time we've played a series against them, they've always been close games. It's never been a whitewash series or anything like that. It's always been like a 3-2 and a must-win game. So we know how dangerous they can be. They've got match winners throughout that team. And we know that we have to be on our best game. If we're on our best game, I'm sure we'll win. I'm not going to lie to you and say, look, we're like robots, we just go out there and play. Like, obviously you have your human emotions. I think the team that will play best in the final will be the team that keeps their emotions in check. We're well led. We've got a good captain who he's very level. He doesn't get too high when we win. He doesn't get too low when we lose. So having him at the helm sort of keeps you very level-headed and feet in the ground. So I'm sure we'll not be taking it lightly. And although there will be pressure, as long as we stick to the values that we've had over the last 4 years, I'm sure we'll do well.
I love the fact that there are at least some Englishmen that are being very level and low-key about this. Not everybody is beating the drum like Graeme Swann has been for the last month or so. But let's go back now to Swanee, who's with Alexis and Murli Karthik, and we'll hear from them in just a bit as we try and figure out what's going on in London. I think they're being continued to be hounded by more and more people, and Swanee and Karthik are closely monitoring the weather. Alexis, let me go back to you. You seem to have something very interesting going on.
Yes, guys, some really interesting stuff here. I mean, we're just seeing some planes flying overhead, and now not one or two, but three parachutes have dropped out of the plane, or on purpose, of course, and they're just sailing around Lords right now. I'm assuming they're trying to get right onto the pitch. Swanee, is that what the intention is, even though this one's going really far?
Oh, don't worry about that. This is the Red Devils. This is our army parachute guys. They're going to land on the nursery ground there. The flares going up in the background. It's all part. When we do sports in England, we have to have people jumping out of aeroplanes. It's what we do best, to be honest. And,
it is what you do
yeah,
best.
so we heard the plane going over. We thought it would be another protest plane like we saw at Edgbaston.
Yeah.
But no, it's the paratroopers.
Yeah.
They'll probably have the trophy with them. Well,
Oh.
they haven't got the trophy. They've probably got the ball for the start
The
of the game.
speed at which he came, I was scared actually.
I was scared actually a while ago because he was coming down pretty quickly.
He's
But
the
anyway.
Joffrey Archer of all parachuters.
Oh, just keep throwing that salt in my words. But let's talk about what some of the guys were talking about there in studio, and of course what Mark Wood was saying, just the transformation of this England team, because I had asked him and he said some very interesting things, because I asked him if he thought that this England team is just the most complete England team that they have had, and he said, you know what? Yes, because it's okay to toot your own horn. He said we have match winners
Yes.
in every player. Is that how you view this
You
team
know,
now, for
I
sure?
absolutely love Woody. Firstly, because I mean, no one can really understand him because he's a Geordie. That was the accent.
Oh,
if you're
that
wondering.
accent is fun,
Up in
though.
the northeast, it's fun. But secondly, he's very honest. He's not really had media training. He's not one of these who talks like a robot, says, well, it's about the team winning and we just do this. Because that
real.
does not suit.
He's a
He's a
lad's
real
lad.
guy. And he said, it is good to toot your own horn, which is great to name, by the way. This is the best England team we've ever had. And I love how he says it's strange how we've ended up against New Zealand, because it's basically down to New Zealand, or Baz McCullum in particular, why this England team is in the position it's in. Owen Morgan basically just stuck himself to Baz McCullum's side and learned all he could off about one-day cricket, about his approach to one-day cricket, about the way New Zealand played, sort of fearless. People say punching above their weight cricket. It's not actually punching above their weight because they're world-class cricketers. But it's all down to New Zealand, and it's gone full circle now. It was New Zealand in this World Cup who England suddenly found their mojo against at Durham, and now it's New Zealand they're playing the final. As I said before, this is the perfect. Australia are gone, and it's down to.
Oh, well, they are just glimmering and glittering, aren't they, in London? And We will get back to Lords in just a bit, but let's pick up that chat from where Swann left it. It's quite a glowing tribute to New Zealand that England decided they're going to change everything and play exactly the way your team and Brendan McCullum's team played.
That wasn't a technical fault, was it? We just got rid of Swanny, but had enough of listening to him. I think it is. I think Owen and Brendan are very close friends, so there's obviously a lot of learnings that have gone on. But I think it was bigger than that. It was just the way that England were at the time. I think they had a team selection that looked off. They had players that suited the game but weren't actually in the team. And so I think the things that they've done really well is selection first and foremost, and I think Morgan's led that revival around finding players. Jason Roy, Ben Stokes, Butler, those guys are the spine of the team. And then they're very good players, and I think that's a starting point for everything. You have very good players, and then you can implement an attitude and a style from there, and that's what Morgan's done. And he's a very relaxed captain, and I think that helps the English team, that they like to sit back and know a captain's in control, and then they can feed off that.
I mean, it's also a vindication of them winning if they play this sort of brand of cricket that they've emulated from New Zealand. They've continued playing it, and that's essentially what's taken them through in big pressure games.
Yeah, but they've also been smart. I think that Australia semi-final sort of tells you, that at the start of the innings they weren't batting like the way they have over the last few years. So you've got to have good players, and you've got to have good players who are smart enough to read the situation well, and England's got plenty of them.
All right. Well, let's pick up this conversation. Big toss coming up now, and it is the World Cup final. How big is this going to be? Well, let's move to the toss for viewers in the Caribbean. Nasser Hussain is with Kane Williamson and Owen Morgan at Lords. Viewers on ESPN Cricinfo, stay right with us. Big toss, possibly a game-deciding toss, shall we call it? If it didn't happen in the second semi-final, but looking at what Lords has offered, team batting first has won everything so far. Is that a big toss for you?
Game over. It's done and dusted. I think it is a big toss. I think just because the team would have planned for that. So when a team plans for winning the toss, then straight away you can implement those plans and understand exactly what you want to do. When you don't, you have to go to your secondary options. So I think it brings a good feel to the team, and I think it'll bring good feel to Martin Guptill as well, and get out there and bat and take them on instead of having to wait for that innings. So I think the team that wins will be obviously very happy with that start.
Yeah, and we just look at how Lords has played in the 5 games it's had. It came into the World Cup about 3/4 of the way into the tournament. Pakistan and South Africa played the first game at Lords this World Cup, and the teams batting first, like I said, have won all the games, all 4 games rather, and the first innings average score has been 288. That's for the pace bowlers average 22. Mitchell Starc has done well. Shaheen Afridi got a 6 for, and the spinners averaging 54 spins. Not played as big a role as we initially had thought, but each spinner from either team has had a significant imprint on both semi-finals in Mitch Santner and Adil Rashid. And as we just look back at the games at Lords, it's perhaps a feel-good toss, isn't it? Yeah.
It has to be. Yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, like Dan said, you have a certain plan set for the day. I think interesting numbers. The left-arm seamers have had quite a big say at Lords. I mean, whether they're obviously good bowlers, whether they've had a great day, or whether something to do with the slope as well, which has played a part, we'll find out soon. So Trent Boult anyway was going to have a big part to play in this game if New Zealand have to win, but could be an even bigger part. So yeah, it'll be a good toss to win, no matter who does.
Yes. I think the spin numbers are interesting because you look at the Lords game, New Zealand used 3 spinners. Sodhi played, Williamson bowled the most, and Santner. So it has spun. And so team spinners can be successful there because of the nature of the wicket, but it is interesting that the numbers don't support that on a turning deck.
Also perhaps as to where you are as a team, you've not quite played your second spinner, and you're not going to change that now. If New Zealand had gone with their second spinner throughout, England had gone with 2 spinners throughout, that might have been interesting if it had seen both 4 spinners in the team.
Yeah, and I thought teams would go from that from the start. I thought the 2 spin option would complement most teams, and because England was so used to playing with it, they would have an advantage. But Plunkett's come in, done a great job, and they've preferred the seamers, and it's been a seamers tournament so far.
It's been a sort of odd Lords surface. It's not necessarily given us something that's been consistent over the course of those 4 games, because while you've had Pakistan scoring 308 against South Africa, and then Pakistan scoring 315 against Bangladesh, there have been scores of 240 and 280 that have been successfully defended, and quite easily. New Zealand going down by 86 runs in a chase of just 244, and even the Australia-England game with 285, you thought England wouldn't mind that, and then they lose quite comfortably. You're not sure what to expect from the surface at Lords sometimes.
Yeah, but it certainly helped the bowlers. So it can't. I mean, there's highly unlikely that it'll be a 350 game.
Yeah. That's something we will we will have factored, and England have seemed to have got that into their calculations too. That they perhaps lost the toss in the semi-final and played the way they did would give them some confidence though, but it does look like New Zealand have had the first initial advantage. Right, New Zealand batting first then, and let's go straight back to Lords, where I'm sure Alexis, Swanny and Karthik are waiting with us. And when that screen started glimmering, I thought, Alexis, you guys are going to break into some music video, and I can't ever rule out that that's something you and Swanny would do. News has come down. New Zealand have won the toss. Kane Williamson's going to have a bat, and looking at what Lords has offered, England have to do this the hard way. So let's go to you, Alexis. Pick things up with Swanny and Murli Karthik. All yours.
Yes, indeed, Ronak. Trust our music video coming later on as soon as the rhythm section, as we'd say in the West Indies. I'm not sure what you'd call it here in England. Yeah, the rhythm section is coming up slowly, so probably not be here you in just a...
I tell you what, it's probably a good thing, because I think if England win this today, Swanny's going to be unbearable. So let's hear as little of him as we can. Now we'll try and get back to Graeme Swann and Murli Karthik in just a bit, along with Alexis. Let's just confirm teams for you then. World Cup final, it's an honour that few cricketers get to embrace in their life, and there are no changes to New Zealand's playing 11. So no possibility of a Colin Munro. Henry Nicholls had a late fitness test. He was nursing some sort of injury, but is clear now to play a World Cup final. And of course, the likes of Martin Guptill, Kane Williamson, Ross Taylor, even Matt Henry and Trent Boult all survived from the 2015 final at the MCG. Thoughts, Dan?
I think they'll be happy that they don't have to change a lineup. Even with Nicholls under that slight injury, Dad, I think it was a hamstring, and he spent the whole semi-final off the field. So it's a comfortable team for Kane. He knows his options. He knows where he goes to. Having 6 bowling options, and particularly winning the toss, it might bring all those bowling options into play. Particularly de Grandhomme, who hasn't bowled a lot in this tournament, but his pace-off may be effective. So settled lineup, which is exactly what you want going into a final.
Yeah, no Tim Southee is the only other member of that 2015 squad that doesn't feature in the playing 11 in this game. And I guess it's now time for Martin Guptill to do what he has to do, and he saved it for the final. You said yesterday, now rapid fire preview, he's getting his name on the honours board.
It's done. He's on the honours board. I mean, it must be exciting for someone who has had a tough tournament to get another chance, and to get another chance in a World Cup final will mean so much to him and everyone within the team. So the players that have been performing well will want to continue on with that momentum, and the players that haven't are thinking, well, it'll all be forgotten if I perform in a World Cup final. It's as simple as that. That's all anyone remembers.
Does it play to the batsmen sometimes when they know their bowlers are in such good form? Does it almost make life easier for them? They don't have to try and go out of their way or try and go too hard.
No, I think Kane Williamson will be desperate for Guptill and Henry Nicholls to give them some sort of a start. If not, one of them go on and get a big one, because I think that's been their problem. There's just too much pressure on Williamson and then Ross Taylor to get the job done. And with batting first, you want a sizable total on board. The start will probably dictate how this game goes.
How best do you think a batsman who's attacking finds form again? I know it's perhaps a question better placed to an attacking batsman, but I'm putting it anyway to you. Someone like Guptill, who can't really play the grinding sort of game, which sometimes allows you to play out balls and come back into it. Is it harder sometimes for these natural stroke makers to find form?
Well, I think it's not so much form, it's about letting your mind go. And I think the batsmen are aggressive and then they get away from that. It's sometimes hard to flick back into that aggressive mode. And I think the best batsmen in the world, or the most attacking batsmen in the world, when they're out of form, almost overdo it and go even harder and harder, and that's their way to get back into their rhythm. Because if you're trying to feel your way to it, it's not natural for them. And I think Guptill's a good exponent of being aggressive early on, and I think he's one of those guys that, if he can take Archer and Wokes on, will make a big difference to the whole atmosphere of the team. It's easier said than done. I mean, Wokes and Archer have been perfect. So I don't envy the situation, but I think he's the sort of guy who can hit them off their length if he's aggressive.
Yeah, let's confirm the England team for you too. And there might have been a small injury scare when Johnny Best spent some time in the middle on his back after he picked up a knock in the game against Australia. But he's fully fit. I guess everyone's going to be fully fit when it's a World Cup final at Lords and a chance to make history.
On one leg, I think.
Yeah. So they'd play. But this is a formidable looking England team. They've decided somewhere at that point that two spinners doesn't quite give them the balance they want, and Liam Plunkett stays.
Yeah, I think it was a small boundary at Edgbaston against India, and after the performance, it's just both teams similar. You know, two captains very understated, calm. Both teams playing the same squad over the last few games just helps. Everyone knows their roles a little bit better. The captain knows what you're going to get from them. So helps the situation a lot. No injuries going into such a big game as well, so you don't have to think of too many things to change. Perfect setup for a great final.
Yeah, what I thought was most impressive, Ajit, in that second semi is after losing the toss, how good Archer and Chris Woakes were just executing specific plans for Finch and Warner. It's almost like England have matured. They've told themselves, even if we lose the toss and our bowlers have to have first crack, they were two steps ahead of Australia.
They had a tough game against Australia at Lords.
Yes.
I think just the start of the game, they did come back well later on, but I think, look, Archer's been exceptional throughout the tournament. But it's Woakes' form and the way he's bowling in the last 4 or 5 games. Not only moved the ball, but even that ball to get Warner out, who's been in such good form, tells you how good a form he's in. So those two at the start, I think New Zealand will have to, bat. Try and bat normally, but not lose too many to them because they've been exceptional.
What a story Jofra Archer is. Through 2 or 3 ODIs going into the World Cup, and here he is now, the bowler to look out for in the World Cup final, and he will be taking the new ball along with Chris Woakes. Time for a short break as we build up to the final at Lords. We'll go back to Lords hopefully once everyone's landed down on their turf.
L is for Lords. A venue with such a heavy history that the ground actually slopes to one side. England has hosted 4 World Cups so far, and Lords has hosted all 4 finals. It's got the most famous balcony in cricket, and winning the final here guarantees the cricket world's greatest photo op. Clive Lloyd has got 2 of these photographs, while Kapil Dev and Steve Waugh have 1 each. What about the hosts? England actually have felt at home at the home of cricket in World Cup games.
We're not far from the final of the Cricket World Cup 2019, England v New Zealand. Kane Williamson's taken the slight early advantage by winning the toss and deciding to have a bat first, which with the trends and patterns at Lords seems like quite the significant move. Not to mention England having lost all those World Cup finals chasing, but they won't be remembering or focusing on that at the moment. New Zealand have batting woes of their own that they would want to focus on and hope to get right. Let's just have a look at what ails the New Zealand batting outside of Kane Williamson.
For a team that's made it to its 2nd consecutive World Cup final after beating heavyweights India, it's tough to imagine a big batting flaw, but New Zealand may have a worrying one. And it's got to do with the sheer dot balls they consume in their innings. Despite some prolific run makers, New Zealand lie close to the bottom of the list of average runs scored per over, just over wooden spooners Afghanistan. It's a stat that can hurt them while facing England, the fiercest batting side in this World Cup by many counts. There's an evident reason for the sluggish batting. New Zealand's openers have failed more than succeeded, and the onus of rebuilding the innings has fallen on Captain Kane and the middle order. Secondly, playing many of their league stage games on slow turning tracks too hasn't helped. New Zealand's boundary percentage of 40.25 is the 2nd lowest this tournament, and by contrast, England have scored 100 more boundaries over double the sixes as the Kiwis. That's potentially a lopsided batting battle in store. And for the visitors to make it a worthy fight, their experienced batsmen will need to suck up the pressure and get a move on.
It's a hard place to be sometimes if you're an out of form opening bat going into a World Cup final. And I mean, we saw that final in 2015. I can't help but keep drawing parallels to it. There was 3 for 30 in 12 overs or so, and you feel like the game's already Australia's. But there was a sort of a recovery and then another collapse. But sometimes do you think if you lose 2 or 3 quickly, that just changes things in the dressing room and it's hard to recover from there in a World Cup final?
I think the first 10 overs sets the tone, and particularly in this final because of the quality that's on display on both sides. So I think there's almost a case for just getting through that 10 overs. We know we talked about Guptill earlier being aggressive, but I think if New Zealand can set a tone with the bat and get through those 10 overs and be able to attack through those middle stages, I think it's going to be a big change for them because England have relied on that first 10 overs. So I think they'll go all out with it again. So it can set up, but I think you're right. 10 overs doesn't dictate the game, but it goes a long way to setting the tone.
Yeah, I don't think New Zealand would want to lose too many wickets. I mean, stating the obvious, but at least their openers would want to, even if it's a smallish partnership, they'd want to get through that first 5-6 overs minimum, not get Kane Williamson in the second over.
What we've seen is they're almost masters of just assessing the situation or conditions and how much would be required on a given day. That semi-final is perhaps the greatest testament to that. But as we look at the leading run getters and the best averages for New Zealand batsmen against England in ODIs, you've got Kane Williamson, who's top of the tree. This is all time with a minimum of 500 runs. Williamson at number 1 with an average of 56, and Ross Taylor's got an average of 50 against him. Martin Guptill averages nearly 50 against England in ODIs with a couple of hundreds and a few 50s. Anyone in the New Zealand team who cares about these things? Oh, I love playing against England. Great average. I've got a great average. Would anyone be telling Martin Guptill this?
I think they'll be telling themselves they love playing against England. The tough bit to counter that is Woakes and Archer. And I don't think a lot of those innings would have been against those two as a new ball pair. And the English bowling attack just covers all bases. And I think that's another reason why they are where they are. And their whole team is so well balanced. So, no, they may take some a little bit, but then they'll just reflect on who's coming up in front of them and say, not quite so easy today.
So let's focus on those two then, and not the two in front of them. And Chris Woakes and Jofra Archer have perhaps been the standout opening bowling pair. When you look at all the other pairs that we've seen, Henry and Bolt would come close, wouldn't they, Ajit? And as we're looking at a list of fast bowlers, Malinga's almost had to do it all on his own. Sheldon Cottrell, perhaps the same thing too. But looking at the most impactful, most prolific bowlers in the first power play, and Jofra Archer right up there along with Sheldon Cottrell and Matt Henry. The bowling in partnerships, the two of them, are going very little away.
Yeah, and getting wickets. You look at that wickets column.
Yeah.
13
wickets.
Yeah, when you consistently get wickets at the top, you can have a lot more control of the game. Not many batting lineups are that explosive that in spite of losing early wickets, 2 or 3, they can still keep going, coming after you. You've got to still then reassess the conditions, which against an England batting lineup then makes the job a lot tougher. It's just the way they are bowling and how consistent they've been. I mean, that ball to Aaron Finch to start the innings, that's the ideal length, and that's the learnings from the previous game against Australia, which is another big thing. I mean, Woakes, like I said before, Woakes over the last 3 or 4 games
hugely improved.
It's just incredible. I mean, to consistently bowl well at top order, world-class players and get the job done. It's the wickets. Keep coming back to that. You get wickets again. Today will be another day where if they do pick up wickets, they'll always be on top.
I'm trying to think of how much just the change in balance of this team affects how you use your opening bowlers. And bringing Liam Plunkett in gives Owen Morgan the insurance that Plunkett, Mark Wood will bowl middle to death. India have had this thing of they can't bowl Bumrah too many at the top because you want to bring him back at certain phases. You're not quite sure of Shami or Bhuvanesh. But on the other hand, Owen Morgan has the luxury to bowl 12 overs out of, or 14 overs out of Archer and Woakes if he needs to.
Well, I think it's only 2 power play overs that haven't been bowled by Woakes or Archer through the tournament. So I think it sets up for them and it allows Morgan to attack because he knows he can utilise those two in their most advantaged situation, and I think that sets teams apart. So when you can set your bowlers up to be in their best possible spot, it allows for such a different dynamic and an attacking dynamic. Whereas as you mentioned, India, they've almost saving Bumrah, where he may be more effective if he bowls 6 or 7 up front, but he has to bowl that back end. Whereas England have set all their bowlers up to bowl at the perfect time. Rashid compliments when he comes in and needs to, but they have bowlers for every situation.
You're just as a fast bowler.
Stokes in that team just gives them so much balance.
I forgot about him.
I mean that just changes the whole dynamic of the team.
Yeah, Stokes, the bowler's almost gone absent in this World Cup.
Because he's such a good batsman who bats at number 5 for them. They don't really need to use him if there's no need to. I mean, he brought him much earlier last game, I think, before Plunkett. But that's all on the day that captain needs to decide. So real luxury having Stokes in that lineup.
And we're trying to put all the praise that this bowling lineup deserves. And we've not mentioned Adil Rashid, who perhaps had his best game in the semi-final.
I might have missed a few games, obviously, but I haven't seen him bowl better than he did in the semi-finals. Went for over 50, but the control he showed, amount of times he beat the batsman because they couldn't pick him was exceptional. If he has another good performance, he'll help Morgan.
It's not going to happen because Martin Guptill's going to whack him all over the park, isn't he, Daniel?
100%. I'll be happy to see Rashid versus Guptill.
That'll mean Guptill's played out 15, 20 overs. And if Guptill plays 20 overs, you'd think that New Zealand would be well on course to a big score. And let's find out big score before we leave our viewers in the Caribbean. 260, 270, 300.
I think final 260. I think with the way that Lords plays, that's the starting point. I think if they have a great day, then you can go ahead of that. But that'll give them the opportunity to bowl well, to give Bolt and Henry a chance with the new ball.
All right. Well, New Zealand, you know one thing, that this bowling unit is going to put everything they have to try and bring home a World Cup. They did perhaps the bowling performance of their life against India to restrict them to what was at the time we thought a pass score. But let's find out now, viewers in the Caribbean. Time to move to live action. The anthem's coming up as well on the other side. And then the World Cup final is coming your way. Do join us again on ESPN Cricinfo Matchday UK 2019 at halftime to see how much New Zealand have got. Viewers on ESPN Cricinfo, stay right with us. We continue build up till the first ball. So let's focus on what's happening in the world of social media, because when New Zealand get to a final, as we remember last time, there are a lot of things that come their way. There's support from all corners of the world, and it's almost like the England cricketers and the England cricket fans have had their voices up all through the tournament, but the New Zealand cricket fans have probably just found their voices at the right time. As Anubhav, I don't know which way he stands. The grey tells me maybe there's a little bit of New Zealand in him. What have you got for us one last time, Anubhav?
Thank you so much, Ronak. I can't believe it's the finals already. A line springs to mind that I think best describes the brevity of life, and it goes, the days are long, but the years are short. And I think the same applies to the World Cup as well, because the days were long, but the World Cup felt oh so short. We'll commence proceedings with the Sunrisers Hyderabad with a throwback to 2016, when Owen Morgan as well as Kane Williamson were part of the 2016 IPL winning captain, and the Hyderabad team wishing both skippers all the very best. Up next, we have Kane Williamson, who's at Lords and says, great to be back at the home of cricket. Always a pleasure to play here. So he seems extremely confident, so confident that he's forgotten his pads and is carrying everything but his pads, as pointed out by Jimmy Neesham.
He doesn't have an account, so that's not his. Someone's doing it for him.
Fake Kane Williamson.
No, it's not fake.
Well, Jimmy Neesham's replied to it, I guess. So,
yeah, Jimmy Neesham's.
So there's that.
I know Kane doesn't have any social media, so someone's doing that nicely for him.
Yeah, well, he doesn't need pads, the sort of form he's in, I think.
No, don't worry about it.
But yeah, carry on.
Up next, we have another man who's never short on confidence, our very own Graeme Swann, who says, I can't remember the feeling more excited about the day ahead since I got my blue BMX bicycle for Christmas when I was 4. So it's been 36 years since Graeme Swann has been this excited. Just goes to show the magnitude of the occasion and what it means to all English cricket fans. Up next, we've got Tammy Beaumont, who's the opening batsman for the English women's cricket team, with a look back on her best day as a cricketing player, and she wishes the lads all the very best and says nothing more exciting than a Lord's final. Bring it home. Next, we have Scott Styris, who reckons that this blue patch, that's the United Kingdom, will be rooting for England, but the rest of the world will be united in this support for New Zealand. Next, we have the usual suspect, Kevin Peterson, with a tweet that...
I was so hoping we'd get through at least one social corner without KP, but you've let me down on this one, Anu.
But they come up with these gems, you know, Ronak. I can't help but
oh God,
them.
Is that KP and his Photoshop worst?
I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's a trademark
shocking.
KP post with a morphed picture of the English cricket team with a trophy that looks anything but the Cricket World Cup, and he says, job already done.
Couldn't you just get a picture of the Cricket World Cup, the actual Cricket World Cup, which has got quite a nice, iconic design to it now? He's just taken any random cup he got and he's done quite a shabby job of that, Kevin Peterson.
Might be worried after losing the toss at the moment, though.
All right, Anubhav, is that it?
Next, we have the New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks, with a message for the New Zealand cricket team. And trust me, you're going to love this, especially if you belong to the rest of the world segment that Scott Styris had highlighted. We'll roll the clip right now.
Hey, Gary, Kane, congratulations on what's been a great tournament and the opportunity in the final, and wish you all the best on behalf of the All Blacks. I know Rito wants to say something too.
Kane and the boys, go hard. We're right behind you here. Everyone will be watching. How good will it be when you guys stuff the Poms on the home of cricket? Let's go, lads. Give them a taste of Kiwi.
You know, that's them not doing the haka and being nice, and yet I'm intimidated. It's almost
Kieran Reid, good cricketer too. Played
Yep.
Northern District's age group cricket, good fast bowler. So
I think he's done well to go the
yeah,
other way.
he
He
made
looks
the right,
more-
he made
he
the
looks a
right
natural
decision.
fit for rugby, yeah.
I think they do love their cricket, the
Yeah.
rugby boys. You see them all the time supporting the guys.
All right, Anubhav.
And we'll conclude proceedings with the tweet that we had featured on the first day of the Social Corner. So we've come full circle. Here's Leratu Malakutu, who's the media officer for the South African cricket team. And she comes up with a beautiful stat, and she says, no captain sporting a beard has ever won a Cricket World Cup.
Well, that'll change, wouldn't it, Dan Vettori, today?
We're supporting. We've got the beard. So
No, well, New Zealand tried the clean-shaven captain. Didn't work
Morgan
in
normally has a
2015.
bit of stubble, a little something there.
Owen
so
Morgan, yeah, he does. Perhaps he does. Anyway.
This is what it's come to. We're talking about
Yeah,
it.
but these are the sort of things that matter now. Anubhav, thank you very much. Been great having you on the Social Corner, and expect plenty more such nuggets on ESPN-Cricinfo.com from Anubhav. Let's keep this conversation going and perhaps focus on the rest of the New Zealand batting too, which has come into action a little early, earlier than they would have liked. But Ross Taylor, ahead of what you never know, but what should be his last World Cup game. And for a player who's, we spoke yesterday, been part of such a long history and rich history for New Zealand, this is a wonderful send-off at Lord's, if it is to be his last World Cup game.
Yeah, I think 2 semi-finals, 2 finals. So it's by far New Zealand's most successful World Cup cricketer. So he will be excited about that. And he was a young cricketer at Lord's. He loves the history of the game. So it'll be a big moment for him. And he played so well in that semi-final. So I think having that in the back of his mind will mean that he can go into that game with some confidence. And Tom Latham as well. I think the two. Tom looked really good in the game against England, and he looked good against India, albeit he got out to a good catch from Jadeja. So I think Ross and Tom in those middle stages is something that New Zealand probably lacking in the early part of the tournament, but those two together, finding some form, can just complement whatever Kane does.
Lord's has its own sort of presence, doesn't it? It would add something to these players. Maybe it's a good thing that both these teams, or England obviously would have, but even New Zealand have already played at Lord's. Maybe the feeling of the occasion will sink in a little easier.
I don't think it's still going to matter. It's a World Cup final. I think whether they've played a game there before or not, the occasion's so big. Hopefully they can keep their nerves in check, both teams. That's how you'll end up getting a good game. But look, most of them would have played for New Zealand.
Yes.
And obviously the English players play there all the time. But most of these guys would have played a game at Lord's. You can't get a special or more special place than that for a World Cup final.
I'm just feeling like this is a wiser, smarter, more mature New Zealand team than 2015. It's just giving me that inkling. England would have the nerve.
Now that you've got to know me, you're starting to see why.
All right, now we finally reconnected with Graeme, Swann and Murali Karthik. They tried their level best to have some say ahead of this big World Cup final. So let's go back to Alexis Nunes and take final words from Swanee and Karthik.
Well, guys, the rhythm section is getting closer and closer, but we're going to try and talk about the toss as quickly as possible in this one. So New Zealand winning the toss, choosing to bat first. Karthik, let me come to you first on this one, because Swanee described it as brave from Kane Williamson to choose to bat first. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's a gutsy move, because the overhead suggests something else. But obviously, you look at the stats of what has happened at Lord's recently, and you're thinking, okay, let me bat first, because teams batting first have won. But when you look at the overheads and the conditions, yes, it's a bit of green, but is there a bit of superficial green, or does it actually have anything to it? I think that is something which they would have taken into account. And also, sometimes teams do go by stats. Teams do go by the fact that at the end of the day, it's a final. Anything you put on board, the other team has to chase. So possibly those are the reasons, but I completely am with Swanee when he says it's brave, it's a gutsy move.
Swanee, you definitely think that, because you're thinking someone like Jofra Archer, and of course Wokes are probably licking their chops now. Cannot wait to get that new ball on this pitch.
Absolutely, especially after the way they bowled against Australia in the semi-final. Starting off, they were fairly similar conditions, but if anything better for batting and edge batting, because the sun was out as well. Everyone thought, oh, win the toss, win the game there. The way that Wokes has bowled, especially since the Australia game here, where he bowled too short, it looked great, he beat the battle up, he didn't get any wickets. It's the way he's bowled since that game, Wokes and Archer. I was nervous that England would bat first because of Trent Boult and Matt Henry in these conditions. I was thinking that would really even these two teams out. I think by batting first, New Zealand have actually, rather than grab the game by the by the horns, I think they've actually handed the advantage to England, because just having played at Lord's a lot over the years, if it is like this, and there has been a bit of a green tinge, that first 10-15 overs can win you the game, just as it did against Australia. Getting Warner out, getting Finch out within the first 2 overs won England that cricket game. So they'll be hoping to do the same again. If Archer and Wokes put it in the same place, England have definitely got an advantage by bowling first.
And just to add to what Swann said, even the game which Australia won against England, they could have been 50 for 7. There were so many plays and misses. It was just sheer dint that Warner and Finch didn't get out. So once they got out, it didn't look very easy. So Swann, and with the way New Zealand have batted the top order, I think it is advantage England.
And quickly, just before we go back to studio, you know the old saying, guys, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Both sides unchanged in this one. Swann, I know you might have a little bone to pick with England still, but this is a final. And, I mean, do you really see them to find a reason to change this team?
I think you should be allowed to play 12 in a final. Because Mo, honestly, I wish Mo was there. No, you cannot change the team.
Yeah.
You cannot change this England team that has won so well over the last few games. There's no one to drop, to be honest. But Mo, this shouldn't happen to a nice bloke like you. This should not happen to finger spinners.
And Karthik, good move, unchanged for both teams?
No, completely agreed. Unless and until a move is dictated by some injury or possibly the conditions being so drastic that you have to bring in the extra spinner, I don't think so. You need to change. Like Mo, I feel for Rish Sodhi.
Yeah.
Because he's a very good bowler as well and a very good man. And all he has done is just sit out.
I got a lot of time for Rish Sodhi, for true. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Well, the rhythm section is coming up very shortly, so we probably won't be able to hear you. So for now, we're just going to dance out and head back to studio.
The Lords of Dancing, Alexis Nunes and Graeme Swann. Let the party begin. The Cricket World Cup final is upon us. Let's have a look at ESPN Cricinfo's Cricket Picks one last time.
Put your tipping to the test. Play Cricket Picks, the new predictor game from ESPN Cricinfo. Make predictions and track your progress throughout the tournament. The easiest thing you'll do all day. Go to espncricinfo.com/cricketpicks and play today.
Right, which way are we looking? Daniel Vettori is all on his own, all by himself, as Messrs. Agarkar, Karthik. Hodgie's there as well, just tossing in England to add to your woes. I'm with you.
I'm disappointed in Hodge.
You're disappointed in Hodgie?
Yeah, it's a low blow.
You don't expect better from Ajit and Karthik, is it?
It's objective, so I understand that decision. Hodge has just thrown it in there for the sake of it.
I tell you what, it's going to be a cracking conversation if New Zealand are to win it. But let's just hope for a close game of cricket. That makes for a better conversation. And remember, this World Cup final, don't just watch the match. You can play it as well. Check out Hotstar Watch and Play if you haven't already. One last time for you to check out this super cool innovation that lets you invite your friends, predict every ball and chat about the match all in one place. Winning the prediction is enough. You get to win some amazing prizes as well. We'll pick up the Hotstar top comment in just a bit. Dan Vettori, it looks like Martin Guptill's going the same way as Brendan McCullum did in 2050. He's going to have a crack. He's not going to hold back. And that's the way to do it.
I hope so. I hope he's aggressive and enjoys himself more than anything. Can only go up.
Ajit Agarkar, 260 prediction, 250?
Minimum, I think. Minimum 260. I think anything over that will be difficult for England.
Let's pick up this chat at halftime then. Ajit, Dan, thank you so much. And we will be back on our mid-inning show. Game already underway. Catch espncricinfo.com for ball-by-ball updates. It's the World Cup final. It doesn't get any bigger than this. And in 8 hours from now, one of New Zealand or England will be world champions for the very first time in their history.